October 30th, 2012. Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 was being released within consoles worldwide. What is deemed to be nothing more than a reskin of Burnout Paradise with licensed cars. And while it has a Metascore of 84, making it generally favorable for all within the critic reviews, the user reviews state otherwise. It is a mixed or average, since its score is at a 6.2, which does say quite plenty that the game wasn't that bad, but it wasn't perfect either. Again, physics and mechanics coming from Burnout Paradise, except more watered down. And the progression for racing within this game is very limited, as each and every single vehicle has a specific type of races and a specific amount of them too. And just so happens to make me question the progression of such as far as I'm concerned. As you finish racing around Fairhaven within one car, you have to swap into another one to unlock even more parts, or even do more races per se. Even when going against the cops, there is literally no reward to all the risk that you have been putting yourself into, aside a few speed points to bump up your progression on being the most wanted list. But needless to say, it wasn't that bad either. Of course, gameplay wise is no better than Burnout Paradise or even Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010. Asides that though, there was another problem that people have been catching on to in regards to this game. In the original Most Wanted, you are not only racing against a few racers that are in the Most Wanted list, or should I just say the blacklist, but you were also given options to buy, then modify / customize your car to your liking. And then you go off to racing until you go against Razor, the guy who steals your BMW M3 GTR and used it to get to the top of the leaderboard of the blacklist. The point I'm getting to is that this game lacked the charm in regards to the original. No story, no car customization, no buying cars, none of that is inside the game, which may not seem too much of a problem if you played the older games before Need for Speed Underground even existed. November 19th, 2013. A year later, after the release of Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, Criterion was tasked to make another Need for Speed game with the assistance of Ghost Games. This was a while later after Criterion made some DLC to Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, some of it being overpowered, some of it being not. But of course, most of it being needless if you're playing single player. But as for Need for Speed Rivals, what was the ultimate plan? Well, it's simple. Long and open roads, just like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010, with multiple beautiful environments ranging from forests to the desert to even some snow, with even more free roaming capabilities than what Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 had originally. Speaking of such, you could play as the cops once again. And there is some form of campaign within this game, despite the fact that it's not really the same as most black box Need for Speed titles. Within each and every single cutscene, there's always a bit of monologuing within, just like how Optimus Prime monologues each and every single ending within each and every single Bayformers film.
I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message to any surviving Autobots taking refuge among the stars. We are here. We are waiting.
The game even gives a proper reason in regards to using your speed points that you've earned inside of the game to buy not only new cars but also upgrade your vehicles at the same time, and also a risk and reward system. The more risks you take within the game, whether it's taking down cops or doing loads of street races, the more better rewards you get overall, even though it's really speed points, and at times feels more feasible to deal with in comparison to Need for Speed Unbound. Of course, with the game being somewhat good, there's also a few problems the game had overall. Now, obviously, there's some bugs and glitches inside the game. Some that are good, but quite plenty that aren't good at the same time. A few notable problems that the game has overall, one of them being the pause menu doesn't actually pause the game. Not even I understand why that is to be the case, but I presume the fact that this game was planned to be an online-only game. Unless it was an online-only game, but people complained about it being like this and they wanted to be changed. But regardless, the pausing was a problem, more so for the street racers. Another problem to note out is that on the racer side of this game, there is a very limited amount of cars that you could choose from. So you could only choose from Porsche, Mercedes, Ferrari, or even Lamborghini, as far as I know. And let's not forget about McLaren. Meanwhile, the cops have multiple jurisdictions to drive different various vehicles, ranging from Dodge to Ford to Nissan to even Hennessy and Bugatti. The problem here is that the racers have so little to choose from, meanwhile the cops have a full arsenal at their disposal, even if the vehicle has different variations. And at times, there will be a chance that the game will essentially crash, whether you're playing on the console or even on PC. For the Metascore, it has been bumped down by 4 points in comparison to Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012. As for the user score reviews though, it only bumped up by 1 point. Wasn't very much of an improvement, that's as much as I could say. And why is it like this? Well, for some, no car customization, no characters, no full-on story, none of that. Meanwhile, for others, it generally wasn't the best game they've ever played. Oh yeah, and another problem for this game. The autosave was delayed, but then time skipped to 2 years later. November 3rd, 2015. At this exact date, this was the release of Need for Speed 2015, a title developed by EA Gothenburg, aka Ghost Games, and published by EA. A title that pushed away the aspects of the original series and decided to veer in more to the underground side of gameplay. Stuff like car customization, a campaign, and an open environment to explore upon, with the aspect of the car culture and underground street racing. One can say that this is the Need for Speed game that we've all been looking for. But that wasn't always the case. Going by Metacritic again, same way for the other previous few games, the critic reviews have been amassed up to 66 within the yellow range of the review site, and for the user reviews has been down to a 6.0. This is the insignia that it says, goodbye peak Need for Speed games and hello to mediocrity. And quite frankly enough, there is not just a reason why it's like this. There is multiple reasons as to why it's like this. Reasons that state out why this game was not as good as anticipated. The first reason in this regard is the gameplay, between the physics and mechanics and how everything works. Now the first part gameplay wise is the drivability of your vehicles. Of course this will have both the physics and mechanics at the same time, but it will consist differently depending on what your modifications are in said vehicle. But no matter what different various types of vehicles you choose from, what modifications they have, or how you tune them, the one problem is that while driving the car inside of this game, it doesn't actually feel like you're driving a car. Instead, it would probably feel like driving a boat on wheels. Or perhaps you're driving a car that has its electronically steering system disabled even if you have it start up. And that's being said only because of how slow the steering is overall while playing inside of this game. I say it like this because you're going in one direction, but then you steer to the other way and it takes like 10 seconds just to steer to the other direction. Now I would say at a logical standpoint it makes sense if you're going at very high speeds at like 100, 150 or so, but it's illogical when you're going around 30 to 50 miles per hour. Of course, that may be saying a lot, especially considering that there's an option to tune the steering response inside of this game, but the steering response was not really an issue in regards to Need for Speed. It only became an issue is depending on how you drive the car inside the game. Whether it's the original Road and Track Presents Need for Speed on the PlayStation X or Sega Saturn or whatever, or even Need for Speed Underground. Steering response may be a little bit irrelevant to the topic, but it just doesn't feel like you're actually driving a car inside of Need for Speed, especially this one. And since this is a Need for Speed game made by Ghost, they had the idea of trying to take the scripts that previously existed from Need for Speed Rivals and reuse them for this next title. The gameplay, driving, and handling model, as well as the physics and mechanics in general, have transferred over into this next title, with a few changes. One of them, of course, being the performance parts, determining the effects of your vehicle based on the power that it gives you, with an addition of tuning, which of course greatly affects how well you will handle these type of events, whether it's racing or drifting alone. But this handling was a problem inside of the game. Not only depending on what car you drive, but how much you tune it will make your car unstable in ways you would never anticipate. And as I said, Need for Speed 2015's scripts were the exact same ones in regards to Need for Speed Rivals, rivals, so handling is the same thing inside of this game, except a lot more worse. Inside this game, you are required to have a vehicle that can drift around the corner just to get through one simple circuit race. That would mean going around your auto shop and tuning your car to make it be able to perform drifting a lot more better than you previously had it before. Otherwise, you'll most likely end up losing most of the time because you don't decide to tune your vehicle to have some capability of drifting around a corner. Here's a little example that I have recorded when I was playing through the game with two different vehicles both being the same. The vehicle on the left being the Scion FRS and the vehicle on the right being the Subaru BRZ. Both of them mostly running S-Class performance parts. The Scion has been tuned up to be more of a cornering type of vehicle. Meanwhile, the Subaru is tuned to drift along the corners of the race. Now, even though the footage timing is a bit inaccurate, notice how the Subaru is maintaining its speed after drifting around the corner. It maintains its position all while being ahead of the other vehicles while drifting around the corners inside of the race. And the Scion is not doing too well to a point where the opponents behind you are about to overtake. Between the two cars, obviously the Subaru is going to win the race because it's built to drift around the corners all while going through the straight lines. Meanwhile, the Scion is not going to do too well. The Subaru ends up finishing at a 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Meanwhile, the Scion finishes at a 3 minute and 55 seconds. So yeah, annoying or not, that's how important the drifting is inside of this game overall. And it honestly leaves a bad taste of arcade racing within my mouth at the end of the day. Now, I have my fair share of racing games, much like everyone else since elementary school. Games ranging up to Need for Speed Underground to even Carbon, Gran Turismo's 1, 2, 3, and 5, Fallout's 1 and 2, and Ultimate Carnage, Forza Motorsport 2, Forza Horizon 3, Forza Horizon 4, The Crew 2, and as well as Street Racing Syndicate, as well as Ridge Racer for the PSP, Ridge Racer 7, and even Ridge Racer Unbound to understand one simple thing of all things. While yes, some people want to experience this while playing their favorite racing games, even if it has its own event type within the game, drifting inside of a racing game in general is not really needed all the time. And unfortunately, and since especially the fact that this game is running the same scripts and physics and mechanics in some way as the Need for Speed rivals, inside of this game, you are actually required to drift around the corner in each and any kind of race you go to. But the big question is, do I really want to drift around the corner to make a turn inside of a racing game? I mean, it would make sense since I'm able to do that inside of Ridge Racer as well. Of course, it makes sense because the developers of the Ridge Racer game series wanted to have people drifting around inside of some of these events inside of the game, even if it was becoming more heavily scripted since Ridge Racer 6. But Ghost, in regards to making this game, I bet they didn't want to make it where you need to drift around the corner, but they were needed to do so anyways, based on a possibility that EA gave a small time constraint to Ghost Games to make another Need for Speed title. Like if I wanted to drift, I could play Car X Drift Racing, and if I wanted to play a game that needed me to drift in the first place, I would play Ridge Racer, or even Burnout because the drifting inside of Burnout is more based than drifting in Need for Speed nowadays. The point is, you need to drift around inside of this game regardless of whether you like it or not, so that would mean going around and modifying your vehicle and then perfectly tuning it. Of course, you could install grip tires inside your vehicle inside the game, but you just need to make sure that the vehicle is tuned to make drifting the corners like a breeze. The first time I played this on PC, and this is my second time, so some of the footage is from the second time I played this, I've known how to get through this, but I hated it for what it was. The tuning inside of Need for Speed 2015 makes Need for Speed Underground 2's tuning look more sophisticated and superior in every way possible. Because not only I could make a vehicle go to further top speeds, but I could also handle some corners very well within this game, without losing a fraction of tire grip within the game. Hell, or even needing to lose a tire grip in the first place. The one thing that has been and always will be nitpicked still by the end of the day is nothing more than simply the handling inside the game. And quite honestly, I can't blame the people because for the most part, in my perspective, The handling inside this game is way more worse than Need for Speed Rivals in comparison. Though overall, handling is not the only problem we have inside of this game. At the same time, I could also blame this on the mapping as well. In a matter of simplified wording, this is basically an unreleased crappy map mod for CarX Drift Racing, even though that game had released later on in 2017. And really, I can appreciate the drifting inside of CarX Street, but I cannot say the same for this game because this is another problem that leads you to being forced to drift around corners inside of this game. In the town, in the mountains, and even on the port side, each and every single time you go out racing. Yeah, sure, there's freeways, but it's not like you're gonna stay driving in straights for a very long while inside of this game. And really, the problem is not going straight. The problem is turning your car. If I ever wanted to drift around the corner inside of an arcade game that has drifting mechanics, then Ridge Racer and Cruise and Blast is for me. And to make matters even more worse, the mapping designs inside of this game are just another form of ingredients for a recipe for disaster whenever you happen to play throughout the whole entire game or whatnot. One of these inconsistent design choices would happen to be the concrete barriers that are inside of the roads of this game, especially when you're driving vehicles at much higher performance statistics, in which case crashing into one of them would basically ruin your run in the race. Then there's this one, which probably means you're going to encounter one of them when turning. The same could even be said inside of the large tunnel, even though these ones look more portable than the others. The biggest inconsistency comes from this intersection, and it may be hard to tell given that they're right next to the light poles, but there is a few wooden electrical poles that are inside of the game that happens to be indestructible, which are just as problematic as they look. So say you were in the middle of the race, you enter upon this intersection, driving from 150 to 200 miles per hour, and if you just so happen to crash into one of these,
that's pretty obvious, don't you think?
Now, the way I put this off may sound bad at the very least, but if you were to combine this alongside with the crappy gameplay physics and mechanics like you were doing mathematics, and a disaster piece of a game is created. And all while trying to play through the game inside of this map with crappy gameplay physics and mechanics, having AI, regardless of it's just traffic or some random racers or even the cops, and even online players that play the game, makes playing this absolute fucking nightmare even more worse than it already is. With those two factors out of the way in regards to this game, the next category is going to be the events that you play inside of this game overall. What better way to over-exaggerate your fun inside of this game than to do a little bit of racing around here, right? Well, I mean, I'm exaggerating on that, but even at that, I am not even enjoying some of these race events as it is. First up is circuit and sprint racing. It's kind of the same common norm inside of any other racing game. For circuit racing, you go around the track for a specific amount of laps, and for sprint racing, you go from point A to point B, whoever gets there first. And time trial is basically going from point A to point B like sprint race, except you're going by yourself to beat the clock, all while having to deal with garbage handling and mapping inside of this game. Anyways, moving on. The only good event that this game exists for is only drifting, because this game, basically, as I said, forces you into drifting these corners inside of the game. And there are multiple types of drifting events inside of this game. The first one we're going to talk about is Drift Trial. It's basically Need for Speed Underground drifting. Whoever has the most points in a specific amount of laps wins the race. Which of course sounds simple, but at the same time sounds pretty f***ing boring. All it simply is just you drifting around the corners inside of this game. Kinda pretty simple, unless you were rammed by another player or an AI driver inside of this game, and ended up going to a crash cam that takes 5 fucking minutes to be finished. The second one are toge events. You are competing with a bunch of other racers to see who has the highest score from point A to point B, or unless you're inside of a circuit type of toge event, which should be pretty simple enough because not even the AI understands how the fucking drifting inside of this game works anyways. Even if they did, they make terrible drifters, that's as much as I could say. Actually wait, the circuit ones are drift contests, never mind. Now there's another problem I have. I want to know who's the moron that decides to name all these different types of events that's making me lose track of which is which. The Gincana racing event is the exact same thing as Drift Trials, but the only addition to this by rule is that you're being timed in this event. Yeah, good luck with that. I might as well just go play Dirt Showdown in order to do that. And last but not least is the Drift Train events. And why did I put those as last? Because I fucking hated them. Because you have to drift around the corners and get a specific amount of points, all while trying to stick with these lobotomized fucking moronic drivers that would ever be called AI inside of this game. If you're far away from the other drivers via being way behind or being way ahead of them, you're not gonna earn shit inside of this mode. Drift trains inside of Forza Horizon or even CarX Drift Racing are a lot more feasible because at least I am not trying to compete, but this is fucking ridiculous. You are asking me to drift these corners with a bunch of AI who happen to be very fucking stupid in comparison to Donald fucking Trump just to get points and win the event.
No. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. 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 Hell no. 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 I refuse. No. No.
With that out of the way, I should have mentioned a little earlier about time attacks. Time attack is basically you versus a bunch of other AI drivers and trying to see who gets the fastest lap between each and every single one of you. Sounds like an interesting type of event, but hot damn, I'd rather do a qualifying lap for NASCAR Thunder 2004 to see what place I would get before the race starts. And then there's drag racing, going from point A to point B in a straight line and shifting gears inside of the game. There's just one thing about this mode though, it's very irrelevant. So for drag racing, you don't have to do it, like at all. But you know one thing? This should be at least a drifting only type of game because this game decides to have multiple various drifting type of events inside of the game. But that would be giving the game too much credit. So in order to balance this out, I decided to give this game one name. So thus I should call this Need for Speed Drifting on Training Wheels. Because of, well, you know, the handling. But hey, what doesn't make a good Need for Speed Underground style game without cops? Right? Oh, my lord. I'm just gonna keep this simple with you. Just like how the AI drivers inside this game are, the cops are just happening to be way more worse. For the most part, it's as if they're not even trying to stop you from doing whatever you're doing in the first place, even if you were not doing a race inside of the game. And they only drive two specific type of vehicles. The first one's the Ford Crown Victoria. Pretty basic and pretty slow, so you'll pretty much just outrun it right away. The second vehicle is a Dodge Charger SRT, which is basically from 2012. With this type of vehicle, the cops are trying to do their damnness to keep up with you as much as possible. But with the other sheer amount of incompetence that the AI has overall in regards to racing against you, the cops are no better. And yet between the two, the only one that stands to try to do as much as possible would be the Rhino van, which is exactly why I didn't count the vehicle. And I'm saying that because it only just comes directly in front of you and try to ram you off the road, and that's all it will ever do. Unlike the SWAT van from Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, it doesn't even bother to chase after you. So for the most part, the racer AI may come off as incompetent, and the police AI at the same time is just completely useless. It's safe to say now that the police force inside of this game should be wearing stormtrooper armor from Star Wars because that's how bad they are inside of this game.
Take over.
Besides that though, I have to ask a simple question. What's another way to make sure to copy off of Need for Speed Underground? Oh yeah, I forgot. Car customization. You know, changing your rims, changing your tires, changing the paint of the car, putting some vinyls and stuff like that. While there is some interesting choices inside of the game, there's just a few problems in regards to this. Problem number one is that the customization overall is extremely pointless. There's no styling point feature inside of this game in comparison to the first two undergrounds that pre-existed, which gave a purpose in regards to customizing your vehicle
vehicle in the first place to get some more covers for DVDs or magazines. And the second way of usefulness comes from Need for Speed's Most Wanted 05 and Carbon, where if you change the paint, the rims, the body kits, whatever, it reduces the amount of heat you have overall inside of the game. But inside of this game, it doesn't work like that. You have a whatever high level of heat inside of this game, you lose the cops, boom, you don't have any heat at all. And of course, having some overall downforce in regards to the vehicle. All except the very first underground. I don't think you could affect the downforce with the car customizations you have in regards to that game. I mean, yeah, sure, you have car customization options inside of the game to personalize your own vehicle. But it's just that some of the options don't really fit in that well. And that's not the only problem. The other problem is the fact that the car customization and such is very limited to a few selected cars. Meanwhile, the rest of the cars do not have any form of car customization except changing the wheels or even the license plates. But hey, we need to focus this Need for Speed on the more realistic sense in a manner of speaking, said by some moron who works at Ghost Games. Speaking of realism, there is the graphics as another thing in regards to this. And I'll be quite frank with you in regards to the graphics inside of this game. This is basically what you get from Grand Theft Auto 5 when you mod the game and you have it set to nighttime and it rains all the time. It's supposed to look realistic, but the problem is that realism isn't always the factor in regards to this game. And yet for the most part, this is the only thing that Ghost Games could ever do correctly in regards to this game. It got to a point where people are praising the living fuck out of it for how realistic it looks. Hey, the gameplay physics and mechanics suck. Can you help us criticize it?
Oh hail the game graphics!
Boy, oh boy, the car customization is really lacking and really useless around here.
Oh hail the game graphics!
Oh look, someone made a negative review on this game. Some of the information is factual, and some of it is them stating out an opinion.
Oh hell the damn game graphics!
You get the idea now. The graphics were the strongest suit inside of this game, but the only thing is that it only had to be nighttime to make it look realistic in the first place. But yet Need for Speed Rivals would be the much more Achilles heel of the Need for Speed 2015, considering that it had more attention to detail in regards to the environment from sand to snow to even the forests. It just so happens to be the first NFS that utilizes a day to nighttime cycle, which obviously looks good for the most part. And the rain to thunderstorm weather pattern inside of this game is not constant in comparison to Need for Speed 2015. Be pissed at me all you like for all that I give a damn, because I think Need for Speed 2015's graphics are absolute ass and Need for Speed Rivals is much more better in comparison. And aside that, I'm just the type of gamer that expects the game to not be realistic as far as I know, even if most companies are on the focus of high definition gaming nowadays. Yeah, sure, Forza Horizon's graphics are not as beautiful as Need for Speed, but to compensate for this, they simulated the gameplay physics and mechanics for each and every single car, going off based on the speculations that are made for said vehicle in the first place. Blur by visible looks astonishing in multiple ways possible, and even if the vehicles have some form of simulated handling, the game plays more like an arcade racer, just like Mario Kart, except with the use of licensed vehicles. Cruising doesn't play realistic, nor does it look realistic, but that's the whole damn point of cruising in general. You play somewhat of a fun and wacky racing game where graphics are not the top priority, if anything. Flatout Ultimate Carnage, albeit being a revamped version of Flatout 2 in general, has the most impressive graphical details within the environments and vehicles overall in comparison to its previous predecessors, and remained with the somewhat simcady racing gameplay physics and mechanics, as well as damage models and a system, and especially Tokyo Extreme Racer. By environments and the graphics, it looks realistic, and the driving at the same time also feels somewhat realistic as well. But overall, best racing experience I've ever had for a very long while. I needed this. So riddle me this, how is Ghost able to make ultra realistic looking graphics that are based out of GTA 5 mods, but yet ends up giving this game the most garbage gameplay physics and mechanics that's ever existed. And that's not the only positive that exists inside of this game. The other one would be the soundtrack. Songs like Surface by Aerocord and Insignia by Muzzy, those two being the most interesting songs out of the bunch because they were from the Monster Cat YouTube channel. I mean, if anything, I would play those songs in Underground 2 or Underground or even Midnight Club for all I give a damn, or even in real life. Speaking of, the much better way of experiencing realism instead of the graphics inside of this shitty fucking game, actually going outside, touching grass, and going out for a drive in your own car. Because I am not expecting any form of realism inside of a video game anytime soon within my life. Of course, this is not the worst that ever happened for the most part. The worst part about this game comes out from the main menu page. How about I start up the game? Oh, looky here. It's basically telling me that I need an internet connection in order to play this game. Some may say, oh well, single player doesn't need it. Sorry to say this, but yes, single player also needs this as well. It is strictly engineered to where you need to be on the EA server specifically to play the damn game. For it being a live service game, the rule of thumb is to provide some updates to at least make some fixes within the game overall and add some content if need be. But it's been nearly a decade and EA hasn't told their studios, or more so of Criterion nowadays instead of Ghost, to come back here and make an update to this game. And for the most part, it's been nearly a fucking decade since this live service shovelware has gotten a last update as far as I'm concerned. By yesterday's logic, there literally is no need for it to be a live service game when you're just simply trying to play single player and you bought the game. And the same logic from yesterday, which exists as of today, there is no logical reason as to why this has to be live service if you're not even gonna update the damn game. They could have at least provided the last update where there is an offline patch for this game. But no, we're stuck with the game as how it is. And the moment that it shuts down, it's gone for good. The next thing we have to discuss about in regards to this game is the vehicle selections overall. You have your Toyota Supra Mark IV, the Nissan Skyline GTR R34, the Mazda RX-7, as well as classics like the 1969 Ford Mustang, the Datsun Z, and especially the Volvo. The car selection inside of this game overall is interesting, but there is one slight problem to this in comparison to the original Need for Speed Underground games. There is low-end tier cars, but there happen to be the ones that are extremely overrated within each and every single piece of media, whether it's on Instagram, on Twitter, and appearing in various different racing games and or movies. My one big problem in regards to this is the fact that they went and decided to not include any reasonably priced vehicles. Not only that, but vehicles you wouldn't normally see inside of the streets, fully modded and racing throughout the night. The few vehicle examples I have overall, which comes from Need for Speed Underground, is 1. The Peugeot 206, the Dodge/Chrysler Neon, the Hyundai Tiburon, or the Hyundai Coupe if you're in Europe, and especially the Nissan Sentra, or hell, maybe even the Mitsubishi Lancer Economy Sedan. Like, the choices for the lower end cars are alright, but if they were more veered into reasonably priced, then I guess it would be a lot more better than anticipated. As for modifications, considering the fact that I haven't really explained thoroughly about them, the only things you can modify inside of this game are just the engine, transmission, and suspension. You're not given a modification tab to reduce the weight of your vehicle, although useful, but feels kind of more inconsistent if anything. I can understand that some of the modification parts you need for your vehicle are locked between a certain level, but my problem is that I have to complete some of Amy's missions just to unlock the rest of the performance parts in the first place, which to me comes off nothing short as needless work for just more performance parts. Underground 1 I could get behind because I have to go through progressing the game to get more performance parts over time. Same goes for Underground 2, but with also a hint of trying to find the other workshops within the whole entire map of Bayview just to get more performance parts. Of course, in Underground 2's case, it may seem like extra work, but at least it's a lot more simpler than trying to complete complete Amy's missions inside this game. The missions we will talk about inside the other section of this video. For the engine category of upgrades, you have the air filter, the cooling system, the intake manifold, the fuel system, the force induction, which is your turbocharger or supercharger, your electrical system, your ignition, ECU, engine block, camshaft, cylinder heads, exhaust manifold, exhaust systems, and even a nitrous system. For suspension systems, you have the suspension system in general, the tires, the brakes, and even the sway bars. Oh, and apparently the handbrake too. As for the transmission, the only things you can modify are your differential and your clutch, most of which determines the effectiveness of your vehicle overall. But then again, you're gonna have to go and tune the thing to make sure it's able to drift through corners. And you can only have that one tune for each and every single vehicle, which is ultimately annoying on the long run of things. Which is why I decided to go through the campaign with 2 separate vehicles. And another reason, which I'm probably saying so again, is to go through the drifting and go through the normal racing events that are inside of the campaign of this game. Practically, you could just use your starter car for the normal racing events, and you could go and buy some cheap ass vehicle like a Volvo and use it for drifting. Honestly, it's a lot more easier when you do it like that rather than trying to go back and forth and tune your vehicle and change it from racing to drifting and from drifting to racing. But yeah, the tuning is not the greatest thing I've ever seen in regards to a racing game like this.
Still, could be worse.
Oh, and also, if you're trying to make the game seem as realistic as it looks, at least try to put a realistic amount of car gears. Most of the retro cars, somewhere around the 90s, only had about the limit of 5 gears per vehicle. That Ford Hot Rod should at least have 3 gears. And the old muscle cars, which is the Ford Mustang from 1969, should at least have 4 gears in total. Like, I get it, the game doesn't need to be as realistic as possible, but at least go with the specified amount of gears that the vehicle has in the transmission. Here I go once again mentioning Underground and Underground 2. In those games, you have pretty much 5 gears in each and every single vehicle. You could even have an upgrade to go up to 6 gears inside of those games. If there's one thing I keep track of, it's how unsurprisingly disappointing this game is overall with all of these problems that pre-exist as of today's standards. And of course, the in-game AI is an issue. At one case, sometimes they will be very slow and they'll be easy to beat inside of this game. But should you race on the higher difficulties, and they'll actually provide an actual challenge against you. Which is not that bad unless you see one of them f***ers driving a powerful car inside of this game. For instance, trying to beat a campaign race against Magnus Walker inside of his Porsche 911. Driving constantly up on your ass inside of the game. Up until you crash and you suffer a 5-minute crash cam. And at that instance, he's gone for good. So you can't really catch up with him that much.
But wait! There's more!
It's not only about the AIs that are inside of the races that are annoying, but also the AI that are outside of them as well, aka the AI that free roam the map. Now, for the most part, when you're playing free roam, they don't seem like they're a big problem whatsoever. They're just driving around town. Well, I sure as hell know in the map that they aren't, because apparently the AI triangles are just roaming around the whole entire map like they're no clipping. And this could pretty much happen whenever you're not in proximity with the other AI drivers that are inside of this game whatsoever. But that doesn't make this a problem inside of the game. What actually makes it a problem is the fact as to doing the races inside of the game, whether you're doing it for the campaign or just for the fun of it. While doing a race, the AI will have a chance of interfering inside of the race regardless of whether it was not intentional or whether it was. And this is whether they're driving your direction or they're coming from the opposite direction that you're racing inside of. The same could pretty much be said for the other online players that are inside of the same lobby as you. And honestly, if there's one thing I have to say about AI inside of this game while I'm racing, it's a big fucking problem. But why is this a big problem for me when I know that there's other racing games that have AI while free roaming inside the city? Well, as I said, they could interfere the race at any given point, but the racing inside of this game doesn't function the same way as Forza Horizon or even an older Need for Speed Underground games, where it is you and the other AI drivers you're racing against specifically, minus the AI traffic because they do drive around the streets of the city. Of course,
course, inside of Horizon, you could only see this in the street racing aspect of the game. But even at that, you would not see a random AI driver just driving around and interfering with your race whatsoever. The only likely possibility as to why this is to be the case is the fact that Ghost Games wanted to try to include everything that was back from the older Underground games, especially the free-roaming AI from Need for Speed Underground 2. Except the AI inside of this game is much more worse than what we already had in Underground 2 in the first place. In Underground 2, they roam around because you're not doing a race at any given point. If you do a race, they're not inside the map anymore. That is, unless you end the race and you go on to free roam again. But in this game, it's constant. Even if you're racing, that you're gonna see AI drivers driving around inside of the map and probably screw you over in the process of racing inside of the game. Honestly, other problems, the gameplay, the AI, the mapping, and the fucking physics and mechanics inside this game. And I haven't even gotten anywhere near to the campaign in regards to this game, which makes it all the more worse as time progresses in regards to this game. Throughout the damn video, might I add, which of course is another chapter that we're going to be discussing right now.
At some point, in regards to developing a racing game, a few companies have been making in some standards in regards to there being needing a campaign inside of a racing game. At least one that allows the player to build on the progression and unlock more stuff throughout the gameplay. And for some games, much like keeping the gameplay simplistic, the campaign has to go the same route as well. But this is not the case for EA games, more specifically for Need for Speed. As for some individuals who are inside the Need for Speed community had been wanting a Need for Speed game that goes back to the roots of Underground nostalgia for the most part, Ghost had to go out of their way to try to make cutscenes in regards to the game and not only just progression, which hampered the development time in regards to the gameplay physics and mechanics and the mapping inside of this game, which kind of explains why the gameplay physics and mechanics in general nowadays, especially before the updates, was subpar to terrible. Yet the thing in comparison to this is that how the campaign was made to be was cringe. Terrible. Something that makes this deserve a nomination spot for the Razzie Awards, even though the Razzies is more about the worst films in history. I kid you not when I say the story in regards to this game is appalling as shit. Even though the worst I've seen so far would be Need for Speed Unbound, because Need for Speed Unbound makes no fucking sense. But before that, I want to give some honorable mentions about some of the stuff that should have been in the first chapter, but I've never really included. First up is the limitation of how many vehicles you could have inside the game. The game tries to go the same route as Need for Speed Underground 2, where you have a specific amount of vehicles that you can store inside of your garage inside of that game. Except inside of Ghost's case, you could only have about 5 vehicles inside of the game. 5 vehicles before any fucking updates came to this game. But that changed with the next update, and now you have like 5 extra slots, which wasn't a major improvement as far as I know. Like, I get it. I only have 2 fucking vehicles inside of the game that I drive with. But if I want to expand my tastes into different vehicles inside of this game, at least give me some more fucking room to work with. Number 2 would really be the phone calls for the most part. Honestly, when you go through the campaign, you get these phone calls, it's annoying enough that these fuckers that are inside of the game's campaign are calling you when you're in the middle of a race.
Shut the fuck, you cunt!
I don't want to hear any f***ing shit, and I don't give a shit. You.
But at least on the plus side, when you're done with all the missions, you won't have to hear any of the fuckers being talking into your line, which is a good thing, because I really don't want to hear any of their voices when I'm in the middle of a race, or hell, even if I was taking a snack break. That is, unless you decide to go out of your way to reset the journey inside of this game. Just like me when it comes to making this video, and I really feel very fucking stupid to reset my journey inside of this game. The last honorable mention I want to go with is the updates. From my notes that I've taken previously when I was looking through fandom a long time ago, there has been a total of 6 updates and 17 fixes for the gameplay of this game. Most, maybe even all, were just a minor to no improvement of the game whatsoever. Like, yeah, sure, it fixed some of the bugs in regards to the map not loading inside of the game here and there, but yet the thing is, if they were able to do these kind of updates, how come the gameplay physics and mechanics still feel like garbage? Now, quite frankly, this is just me thinking about this, but the way I see it is that the game developers, Ghost Games, didn't even put the proper time and effort to update the fucking game in the first place. Not even additional vehicles like the Nissan GTR Premium from 2017, or even the Ford Model 18, or even Eddie's fucking Skyline has happened to make the game any more better. So in other words, this game has been getting some fixes my ass. Before we get to the cutscenes, I want to discuss the overview of how the campaign is supposed to go in regards to this game. You are a street racer, obviously. You meet up with a guy that goes in the name of Spike, that one motherfucker that everyone could hate for their entire well-being. He hooks you up with a few of his friends that he knows of, and you do some events alongside with them. The main objective, of course, that this group has overall is to make Ventura Bay very recognizable in regards to street racing and car customization. Now, this is just as basic as Need for Speed Underground, where you basically are racing to become the #1 street racer across the street. Except Underground was pretty basic and simple in every single aspect in comparison to what this game has overall. Much like Underground, this focuses on street racing and drifting around the city of Ventura Bay. But you compare the two games, and the one big difference you're going to find overall is the progression, all while playing each and every single event that is specifically a mission in regards to this game. In spite of the fact that Need for Speed Underground is basically more linear in comparison to every single other Need for Speed game that came out after it, the progression worked regardless. Anyways, in this part of the prologue, you're talking to Spike and a few of his friends in regards to what they are planning to do in the streets. Let's start off with Spike because I fucking hate him, and I'm not willing to wait for the last second to talk about Spike. Spike, a premature adult who acts like some sort of goofy ass kid, has his ambitions aimed towards the streets of the city, but he is more so focused in regards to racing for one individual in particular. Magnus Walker, a British-American fashion designer who had an interest in regards to Porsche since his childhood years, eventually leading to the creation of the 277 Urban Outlaw Porsche 911. Now, why is Spike doing this? Well, I don't know, and I really don't fucking care. But regardless, we're gonna have to go out of our way to play through the campaign and get Magnus Walker's attention, because he thinks the same way as every single other club kid around the whole entire world. He is all show and no go. So we as a player end up doing that and essentially come up with some results that please the guys. But that won't last very long, and it'll be easy to elaborate within the next few moments, which is unsurprising because the camera movements from one individual to another is just really a big eyesore. Anyways, with the group coming up with comical but unfunny, cheesy, and sometimes cringeworthy comments to postures instead of the cutscenes altogether, this still didn't dismiss the fact that we still needed to do as much more to impress Magnus Walker. And Magnus's time trials was one of the other few things that you had to worry about to do such things. We do that, it's all fun and games that we have already accomplished something. Because all while you're trying to do the work, everyone's at the Longhorn playing some pool, and you join in the party in regards to this. The next moment, Spikes comes storming into the Longhorn, and like an envious little elementary child, he decides to confront you on the shit that you've done. Vini Kubane Zora Mokosa, you couldn't do shit more better than I. Apologies, that was a little bit overboard on my part. But in all seriousness, Spike, as a character inside of Need for Speed 2015, is literally one of the 7 deadly sins that goes in the name of envy. He's envious because you're doing all the work and you're gaining all the— hey, point those little huevito fingers at me again and I will shove your The point is, Spike is jealous that you're doing all the work and you're managing to get Magnus Walker's attention in the most part. I swear, if I had a friend like this, I'd tell them, get the fuck out of my face. I do not need this shit in my life.
life. Anyways, he apologizes and decides to let you be on your way as to what you were doing. To me, it takes a lot more than just a fake smile and a simple sorry though, if you want to pull out some beef on me like that. You'll finish up the final mission, and here's the surprise. Magnus Walker's inside of the Longhorn and celebrating your victory in regards to the final mission. The same could be even said for Travis and the rest of the gang too. And then Magnus talks to Spike, giving him his greeting and shaking his hand. Then everyone celebrated cheers, putting cups together. Happy ending for Spike. Moving on. Up next we got Amy, aka Miss Grease Monkey of the whole entire team. The way she is and all that, she's alright for the most part. And her part of the campaign revolves around vehicle builds, especially yours. On Amy's side of the campaign, she has a keen interest in regards to the man that is called King of Caulk and founder of the RWV Porsche wide body kit that he just happens to create on his own. None other than Akira Nakai. Unlike Spike's side of the campaign, which is more so of speed, which is more so of street racing, sprint racing, and even time trials, Amy's is more of all of the above with a few additions on the side. From sprint races to drift events and especially time trials and more considerably time attacks. A race event that I have mentioned a little bit earlier on the gameplay side of things. You setting up your record time around a circuit race all while trying to beat your opponent's record time. All things considerably though, she'll talk to you like she's some sort of mad witch doctor in regards as to the building of your own vehicle, and that you have the freedom to do whatever the hell you want to do in regards to your own build to your own vehicle. But honestly, please do not rev the car while it started all cold. Either way, that's that in regards to that, but until we decide to hit another cutscene and Spike is right there. Grade, my favorable punching bag, is here inside of this cutscene in regards to Amy's campaign. Like honestly, I don't mind it very much if it's Travis or Amy that's inside of this part of the campaign that's talking about Akira Nakai or any other celebrity, but Spike, mind your own fucking business. Aside that, not only Amy seeks interest in regards to Akira Nakai, but the same could also be said for Travis. But there is one issue. Unlike Spike and the rest of the others, you're not really gonna do anything to gain Akira Nakai's attention. Instead, it's just more of her testing her own build as well as yours inside of the game. Remember the modification shop inside of this game? In order to unlock some of the performance parts and body kits and whatever else inside of this game is not 100% based on the level that you are on inside this game. But in order to unlock some of the parts, you would need to complete all of Amy's missions inside of her side of the campaign, which of course makes progressing inside of this game a bit more of a chore. But then again, the same could be said for the older games, but in the older games they were just pretty simple to do rather in comparison to this. Anyways, we do a bit of this and that. We enter to another cutscene. This time Manu is inside of it, just sitting on the couch and vibing to his own music. Quite frankly though, Amy is just gonna continue to move on and give you a little bit of pep talk in regards as to how you make your builds inside of the game. Well, I'll tell you what, cowgirl, this ain't my first rodeo. But besides that, apparently I was wrong earlier inside of this video, because Amy apparently has footage in regards to her build as well as yours, having no obligations to show it to Manu, and possibly is gonna upload it within the social media. But that's the end of that one. Moving on to the next part. As a few missions later, the next cutscene has Amy and Travis talking about Akira Nakai's RWV Porsche 911, or an argument maybe. Apparently Travis got his hands in regards to Akira Nakai's vehicle because Akira Nakai allowed him to take it to his auto shop, and gives the opportunity to both you and Amy to test drive his vehicle. But this test starts with Amy first, as she happens to take the key from Travis's hand. Don't worry though, you're still gonna get your shot at driving the car. After you and Amy ended up finding out what the fuss is over Akira Nakai's build, what eventually happens within the next cutscene is that Travis comes walking up to you and starts talking about the vehicle build, essentially trying to give you more pep talk, just like how Amy was earlier inside of the campaign. Like, dude, you don't have to give me another pep talk. I've played Need for Speed Underground 2 to understand how tuning works.
But Travis converses more in regards to saying that you gotta have your own art in regards to the street racing scene. Oh, I'm sorry, my Subaru BRZ looks plain and simple given on the fact in comparison to Underground 1. It's not like I'm gonna have a style point system in comparison to this game when I'm modifying and customizing my Subaru's BRZ inside of Need for Speed 2015. My builds in here, as well as some other games, are kept simple and clean at the same time because there's not really too much of a definitive answer as to why I should even be modifying this like crazy in the first place. Skipping to the next scene, both Amy and Travis can be seen watching a big video screen. Something about it being one of the old videos in regards to Akira Nakai and the Porsche 911, and oh boy, there's that fucker again. But he's only here for a brief moment until he got swatted away by Amy. What Amy pretty much does in regards to this cutscene though, while the video is playing on the background, she's pretty much translating what Akira Nakai is saying in regards to creativity of your own vehicle. Pretty much talking about the morals of creativity from Akira Nakai's old video. Yeah, sure, like I'm gonna get a 69 Camaro and try to modify the living fuck out of it. Even though most of the time the vehicle is perfectly fine the way it is, like almost all of the time. This next cutscene, Amy could be seen right next to that Sylvia talking to Spike, and Manu could be seen in the background. Amy was just pretty much saying to Spike to get out of the shop, and I can't really blame her against this sore loser. What happens to be the case is that both Spike and Manu are trying to keep tabs on Amy, meanwhile Travis is out and about. Between the two, Spike happens to be the only one that is pissing off Amy. Meanwhile, moments later, Travis walks in with Akira Nakai inside of the shop. Mr. Nakai gives his greetings and shakes Amy's hand. The only problem is he was only speaking Japanese, which is perfectly fine, considering the fact that all of Akira Nakai's sayings were translated within the game. The next moment after the introductions, Nakai walks with both you and Amy and giving out a motivational speech in regards to building a vehicle. But instead of the same thing that both Travis and Amy said, this was more about self-expression. Then Amy shares the exact same thing towards you despite the fact that there's English translation, making it seem like you were a dumbass to not even know what he's saying in Japanese. The very last cutscene in regards to this campaign is that everyone is partying inside of the auto shop with some music and some dancing and of course some fucking red cups, and being escorted by Manu to the rest of the gang and Mr. Nakai, doing the one hand grab thing from the Predator movie with Nakai, then essentially being met up with Travis and fucking Spike, I swear to God. Anyways, we get our drinks in a big group together alongside with Mr. Nakai and decided to do the same thing as the previous campaign and decide to say cheers, all while clashing cups together once again. Anyways, up next is Manu, and this part of the campaign starts at the same diner that you went through in the prologue of this game. On Manu's side of the campaign in regards to this game, however, this is more focused on style, which has to deal with more of drifting around corners. And the reason in regards to this is pretty obvious as it is, as Manu is trying to go out of his way to impress none other than the individual who's been involved in rally racing once before, then proceeds to go on and make his own stunts all while riding along with the Monster Energy logo. Just none other than Mr. Gymkhana himself, Ken Block, and may his spirit continue to rest very easily in the afterlife. Safe to say, I don't have any objections in regards to Ken Block appearing inside of Need for Speed 2015, but it wasn't his first time that he was inside of a video game, even if it's just a car, as he appeared in various Colin McRae dirt racing games that were created by Codemasters, before both this game and the Forza Horizon series. But anyways, Manu is talking specifically to you as to what he plans to do in regards to getting Ken Block's attention. But before that actually does happen, you have to start off simple with a little bit of drifting around town. And for the most part, Manu is pretty chill in comparison to every single other character, and I really don't have a problem with it. The only problem I have is, Manu, a buzz cut or a clean cut or even shaved bald will make you look good. Please get rid of that easy ass haircut. Of course, Manu will have some time trials, but in regards to him, it's just more so that you're doing drift events. Anyways, Anyways, Robin decides to go and leave the two of you alone for the time being. Obviously, we're going to talk about this pointless filler character in the next part. We do a few events, enter a cutscene, and oh boy, I'm paired up with this asshole. We both see Manu meditating, and while that is happening, Spike is trying to creep up behind Manu to try to scare him, I suppose, or surprise him. But then got outplayed by Manu, blocking both of Spike's arms and then putting him down to the ground. Oh no, wait, apparently he was visualizing. Anyways, you and that envious child named Spike are there at Manu's place, and while it may seem like it, this wasn't merely a social call. It may seem like it because you listened to Manu's music for a little bit, which may be copyrighted, so I'm not playing that right there and then. But the name Ken Block appears in a conversation between the two, or three, as Manu is talking about how many videos that Ken Block has overall in regards to him doing his drifting. Now, I obviously did state out earlier that he wants to impress Ken Block, so yeah, that's what he's basically talking about right now. He's saying something about trying to get a few guys together so that way you could do a little bit of a few runs of drifting inside of the city, but probably more so on the mountain and cliff sides of the town. Obviously, after the next few missions, you see both Amy, Manu, and whoever the hell this guy is talking about Ken Block. Amy says about building a car that's similar to the Unicorn. You guys are basically chilling inside the room and oh my fucking lord, why? Spike enters the chill corner. Great. I was starting to miss his most hateable company whatsoever. Manu essentially shows Spike the phone in regards as to what was going on. The main gossip, Ken Block, as per usual. And what we essentially get is more of Spike trash talking in regards to this. And it just so happens that whatever Spike was saying gave Manu an idea as to what he's gonna do next. The idea is to shoot up a run, all underneath in one single take. This is the part where we have to help alongside with Manu and go through the routes that he wanted to pick out in regards to how he wants to make the Gymkhana. Of course, it being for the next few missions. So Manu's gonna go out for a drive, set up some locations for you, and you're gonna do the rest. So we do all of that and a few missions aside. Travis is inside of the cutscene, that fucker Spike, and as well as Manu. And they're talking about how you basically nailed that one run, and how it became a big hit on Manu's social media account in 1 hour. The next moment, the camera pans over to Spike talking to Travis. I swear this is more of that jealousy shit again. Besides that, Travis responded to what Manu said in regards to that video, and is basically saying, I'm out of here, see y'all later. Then eventually Manu gets a phone call, probably from none other than Ken Block himself, basically saying one take but no tricks included. In simpler terms, Ken wants to go in on that run, talking about something in regards to this Gymkhana that can't even be touched by Travis. I'm not too sure what he meant by that exactly. But besides that, after all of this, we get to the final cutscene in regards to the campaign of Manu. We meet up with him, but also at the same time with Robin, Vaughn, and even Ken Block himself. Pretty much chilling out with you and Manu and Robin after the stunts you managed to pull inside of the campaign. It may seem like that, but not at this next moment.
Well, there's this great taco truck on 6. They make these little shrimps.
Spot is amazing.
I don't think Ken's in town to eat tacos.
All that fucking work to get Ken Block's attention, and the biggest concern is fucking tacos. Manu, you are giving me a reason to hate you right now. This is essentially me saying all of that work that we've done so far, and it was for fucking nothing but tacos. Literally feels like the worst type of celebration for this fucking accomplishment. After all of that time put in regards to Manu's campaign. I'd continue ranting about it, but I'm not gonna do that right now. I don't have the time for it. But much like the other campaigns that we discussed about, it's the exact same thing in regards to this one, only the fact that they've decided to install a taco truck in the building. Well, at least it's a better celebration than just trying to go for some fucking tacos. Not only that you're partying alongside with Ken and Manu, but also alongside with Amy, Robin, and this clown-ass punk named Spike. Spike. But at this very cutscene, Manu explains that he's going to be scouting for some locations for Ken Block. Of course, Travis is going to join in on the celebrations too, pretty much saying that they couldn't have done it without me, and I couldn't have done it without them, apparently. Bitch, please, put me in a race against Eddie from Underground or even Darius, and I'll prove your ass wrong. But besides that, Travis looks at his phone and says that he's got a dip right now, leaving the party just to you, Amy, Spike, and even Manu. So the four of y'all decided to get together, clash cups to each other, and started drinking your drinks. A third time in a row. Anyways, next part of the campaign is Robin. Now, much like Manu, Robin is trying to perform the exact same thing in regards to the street racing scene. The only thing is, on her side, it's not just about drifting all alone, it's also drifting with a few other individuals. Yes, it's those crappy drift train events. The reason as to why she's trying to pursue her passion in regards to the Risky Devil drifting team. A group of people inside Chicago who would be drifting around the streets. But before that, she is trying to find pizza. That shit's all cold, at least use a microwave to reheat it. But then the next moment proceeds to talk about the Risky Devil team, and how they basically don't do very much in regards to repairing their vehicles. Style-wise, that's optional, but if it's an important component, then that's a problem. Besides that, Robin wants in regards to the Risky Devil team. So she's got some missions in regards to drifting in general, and essentially a little bit of drift trains. You do a few of those missions, you enter the next cutscene and checking up on Robin at her place. She's trying to show a video in regards to the Risky Devils, but it turns out she has the internet syndrome where it's not really working. But either or, Robin is walking alongside with you, talking in regards to the members that are inside of the Risky Devil Street drifting team. Talking about all the stunts that they've been pulling all together within any single run. She speaks out like a crazed fanatic in regards to this group, and here comes this asshole again. Apparently, Spike came in and talking to Robin that they were supposed to meet up at somewhere. They're both having their little conversation, or maybe it's just building up to be an argument as to whatever is going on through this part of the campaign. From what I can guess, he is thinking that both you and Robin are hooking up to each other. You dumb, envious little prick, it ain't even like that. As a character inside of this game, I don't even like Robin. Anyway, Spike is done having his little moment and left. Good, now we get to the business at hand. Now Robin is saying that in these next few missions, we have to do a few drift train events. Boy oh boy, I sure like to go alongside with a bunch of useless AI to drift around the corner. We've already done a few more of those missions, then we enter to another cutscene inside of Robin's place. It's supposed to be dark and eerie for some apparent reason, even though this is not like Resident Evil, only for Robin to shift the curtain away, revealing four guys wearing pig masks amongst the hall. Robin proceeds to move over to get a baseball bat, then runs out and was about to swing at those guys. Essentially, the Risky Devils took the masks off after all that, but essentially it became more so of a social call in regards to Risky Devil entering Robin's place, as they not only meet up with her, but they also greet you as well, and they end up crashing down on the couch. But that don't mean we could do the same thing too, because we still got some missions to go along the way within the rest of this campaign, even though technically we are, because we're playing a damn video game. Anyways, moving on to the next cutscene where we enter Robin's place once again with the same few members of the Risky Devil team. Once again giving their greetings inside of this cutscene after a few missions, and why do you keep coming back here? Spike's pretty much asking if you wanted to go out and about, but Robin's pretty much saying no. Ghost may as well just make this a love drama. That's all this fucking campaign is between Robin and Spike. They still have their toe-to-toe conversations in the next few moments from this cutscene onwards. Then Robin simply asks Spike, why not chill out with her and the Risky Devil? Now, seeing as Robin is a good friend of Spike's, just like Manu and everyone else, this is pretty much an offer that Spike cannot refuse. So obviously he and Robin are gonna sit down at the couch as well, and they have their moments of cheers at the point. Then we reach the final cutscene where it's already a party, much like any other ending in any other campaign, where we eventually meet up with Travis inside of the place, and that he was giving cheers towards you. And like any other ending, you have a cup in your hand. You'll say your cheers, then you drink, and then you set down cups. You and Travis decided to go walk over and go to see Spike and Robin. They gave out their piece in regards as to how well you'd done and decided to give you a bro fist along the process. And the trio ends up taking a selfie. Nothing special besides that, so moving on. So now we get to the final set of the campaign, which is more so in regards to heat. You, Spike, and the rest of the gang, all except Travis, end up meeting with each other at the diner. Nothing too fancy in regards to this, but the line of cops inside of this conversation is what was setting the remark to the whole team. And the worst case scenario is, Travis is not even with the rest of the group to talk about that. The problem was in regards to cops being around in the streets, patrolling the road, trying to outrun them, and by the possibility that they're raising up the stakes when it comes to patrolling the streets of Ventura Bay. The process of elimination is that a bunch of unnamed drivers around the city of Ventura Bay has been wreaking havoc to a point where the cops have got to step up their game, which of course increases the amount of heat levels that you get inside of the game and that you will possibly be rammed by a SWAT van, and even includes the utilization of roadblocks in the middle of the road. But the discussion in regards to this doesn't end right there. Now before we get to the next cutscene, I need to really say this really importantly. In regards to this part of the campaign event, it don't matter if you're doing it in free roam, if you're in the middle of raids, or whatever may like to be the case, so long as you try to attract the police inside of the street, your only goal in regards to this campaign is to complete a few challenges. And the only way to accomplish these goals is if you don't get your ass busted or you didn't pay the fine. Anyways, the same guys are buzzing in the conversation even further in the next cutscene at the diner. The discussion, at least earlier in one of the phone calls, which I'm not even gonna pay attention, is that apparently someone inside of a modified 1970s Datsun Z is causing trouble in regards to the cops, pretty much keeping the rumors to themselves in regards as to what the hell is going on inside of Ventura Bay. Then there comes one guy that comes inside of the diner and is walking at the edge of the counter. Spike has an eye on him, and the others turn to that guy and taking up a phone call, most likely in regards to some other person on the phone that wants to order something from the diner, because for the most part, he was not talking about getting in trouble with the police. But of course, this cutscene got us nowhere in regards to the situation at hand, so moving on to the next one. In this next cutscene, you are all by yourself getting a drink of coffee, and about bloody fucking time too. The 3 guys that were sitting across you on that countertop were leaving the building. The case to the Datsun Z was set down on a table, and boy oh boy, what a fucking surprise, it's Travis. And here I thought I was about to see Brian T, who played as DK from the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, considering the fact that the whole game is a damn celebrity shit fest. Either way, kept plain and simple, between you and Travis. A conversation about drawing in the cops, and how you were showing some resiliency while going toe to toe against the officers. Although for the most part, Travis is impressed as to what you were doing, but essentially sharing that one moral where someone else is gonna want in on that game as well. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure we've all been there and done that at some point. But then Travis asks you, are you the kind of driver that's in it for the rush? Now obviously I know my answer, but in regards to this game, I do it for the attention, because this game is really fucking bad. The next moment, Travis pulls out his phone and is looking over at some details that his buddies were texting him. No, not Spike and the others. But Travis pretty much is giving him one final test in regards to this. And then Travis walks out of the diner, leaving you all by yourself. But you end up doing the next mission, you end up to another cutscene alongside with some of the other guys that Travis was with inside the same old diner, giving you a fist bump and saying congrats. Not only is Mr. Moroshi doing this, but also some of the other guys and Travis as well. Travis walking up to you and looking at you for a brief moment, but then the next proceeds to give you a smile and is also providing his own part of the congratulations towards you. Or at least this part of the celebration doesn't look like some sort of dance party. The strobing lights gives me a fucking headache. You clash cans and all begins to say cheers, and then have a drink to that. Then at the final cutscene, we meet up with Travis at the dance club, the same one we went through inside of the prologue of the game, all while walking and having a chat with you while you're on your way to meet up with the rest of the other gang and the celebrity. What we're witnessing right here is supposed to be a photo op with every single individual. Everyone's throwing out their little signs, giving out some cheers and all that kind of stuff. Everyone groups up together, all while someone puts an animal mask that is a fox on your face, and the photo has been taken, and there is that.
The end.
Anyways, we may have gotten the campaign in regards to this game out of the way, although it took a very long while for me to do so. So the question is the campaign really that good inside of this game? Well, the answer to that question is, will it be any more better in regards to Lil Jon appearing as special guest inside of Scary Movie 4?
Hey! I got the last way to car in New York! This is our road, bitches!
I'm pretty sure you know how I'm thinking right now, and most of you that don't, my answer is no. Like, yeah, sure, I don't expect the story writing to be as perfect as Metal Gear Solid or even God of War for the most part. But between each and every single Need for Speed game that came before this, it is utterly fucking garbage. But it's at least bad enough for me to even consider this to be as part of a nomination for the Razzie Award. I just wish they could have done this in regards to video games, not just movies specifically. Because a campaign like this, looking at it, makes me want to put shampoo in my fucking eyes right now. The sound of it makes me want to put some noise cancelling headphones all while listening to my own music such as 50 Cent. Even the latest fucking Fast and the Furious movie is a lot more better than this fucking garbage. And yet the film was the worst rated film out of the whole entire franchise. And is literally the worst Fast and Furious film I have ever watched so far. And I'm saying that the campaign inside of this game was worse before the other three came out. To add more salt to the wound, Need for Speed Undercover was the most underrated game and considerably the most overhated game for its time. Even if it has its own fair share of moments, I could get behind the campaign in regards to this game. It's not the aesthetics of the cutscenes, but it's more so of how these are played out. This, on the other hand, is basically a warrant to grow brain cell killing tumors that might as well mix into the rest of the fucking brain rot for how cringeworthy it is. Like literally all of the time. It's so bad that it makes Sonic the Hedgehog 06's story look a lot more sophisticated than this crap. Both the gameplay and the story inside of this game is giving me a few other options as to what I think is more better in regards to this garbage. Instead of playing Need for Speed 2015, I might as well be playing Super Street the game. Not because of the cutscenes, there's no cutscenes in regards to this game, not because of the gameplay, physics, and mechanics. Believe me, the physics and mechanics are ass inside of that game. But it's more so the fact that Super Street the game isn't even a live service fucking game. Which means, if I was out on a trip or decided to visit my grandparents, I take my laptop and it's not even connected to the internet, and I have this game installed on my library, there's a good chance that I'm still going to be able to play it regardless of the fact that I'm not connected to the internet. I can't do the same shit to Need for Speed 2015. For physics and mechanics, I would take Forza Horizon, probably around 3 or 4 because those are the only ones I have right now. Or even Tokyo Extreme Racer if I wanted to play a simulated arcade racing game. Or if I want to play a full-on arcade racing game, I might as well go back into my Nintendo Switch and play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or even a digital copy of Cruisin' Blast for the Nintendo Switch, or go all the way back in time with a PlayStation 2 and decide to play Midnight Club 3. And as for a racing game with a story mode, obviously I'm going to choose between Underground to Carbon for the most part, but if I had to think outside of the box, I would have chosen Driver San Francisco or the very first Disney Pixar's Cars video game. The only thing I'm left with now is asking myself a question as to what made this game bad in regards to both the physics and mechanics and the cutscenes in the first place. The biggest question I keep continuing to have inside of my mind as time progresses onwards is just simply this. Why was Need for Speed 2015, a Need for Speed title that's supposed to relive the nostalgia of Need for Speed Underground games based on the car customization and the campaign, basically being, quote, a Need for Speed game that everyone wanted for a very long while, was somewhat, or most likely, a failure within its time in comparison to Need for Speed Rivals and Most Wanted 2012? The answer to that question is not really as definite as some people could come in and prove me wrong, but this answer involves the three key contributors that made the game the way it was. 1 is the company, 2 is the development studio, and 3 is the community. To start this off, let's talk about EA Games. Now I'm not going to bore you with the whole entire story in regards to the whole entire company, so I'm going to cut to the chase. As we all should be aware of a man that goes in the name of Trip Hawkins, the founder of EA Games, until he resigned his position back in 1994, leaving Larry Probst in charge of the company. All while Hawkins has gone and away to pursue other interests such as making another console, while EA was underneath his leadership, Probst has pushed the focus in regards to making money out of video games. And in order for Probst to ascertain his goal inside of the company, he needed to make a plan in order to accomplish this. One part of the plan in regards to accomplish this was to limit the amount of time that was needed to make a video game. In other words, to make a tight deadline, and to be insistent in regards to this, much like an executive inside of an office who tells you about something every single often. Now back in the 90s to the near start of the 2000s, that wasn't really too much of an issue between the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, and the original Xbox, as well as GameCube, as well as the Sega Saturn, and the SNES and the Nintendo 64. No matter as to what game released within the line, they were all pretty much low definition video games for the most part, meaning that gaming back then, there wasn't too much crazy details in regards to the graphics, the modeling, as well as the lighting. Even if some, if not most studios, try to make some interesting details within the game. Unless they're done with the basics such as making the models, the gameplay physics and mechanics, the scripts and all that, they decided to go out of their way to make these insane details. But at the end of it all, despite the fact that there's a tight deadline in regards to these games, it wasn't too much of a problem back then because of how simplistic it was since then. The same could even be said for next generation releases such as the PlayStation 3 as well as the Xbox 360, but only for a little while. And this is to be said considering the fact that both Most Wanted 05 and Carbon are pretty much low definition games at some certain degree. At a certain point in time, some, maybe even most game companies out there were switching over from low definition to high definition gaming. And quite frankly, EA wanted in on this piece of the pie. Although it's not a bad thing to pursue such interest in some cases possible, EA Games has remained with the same plan from last decade to 2 decades ago after the 2010s struck, with some additions such as mobile gaming and microtransactions. The same plan being that the dev studios have a tight deadline to make another video game. This generation of gaming is what became the biggest turning point for EA from being good to being bad nowadays. This can be said in regards to Mass Effect 3 from Ashes DLC, which is essentially day 1 DLC. Some players have been feeling like there was supposed to be a lot of content in regards to the game, but some of it has been removed from the base game for profit. Essentially more of profit over complete product. I mean, might as well be the case considering that back when Probst was the CEO after Hawkins was gone, he made the company focus more in regards to making money than an actual good video game at some point. And to make matters even more worse, a former BioWare developer had decided to go out of his way to argue his case in regards to DLC to the player base, pretty much pushing his defense to this practice, saying that if the DLC for this game was delayed after its launch, people would have gone out of their way to sell their games after playing it, while some players had made a counter argument in comparison to saying that this logic was flawed, as whatever content that is inside of the DLC should have been included in the full base game, not as a bonus. That's one part of the problem in regards to high definition gaming when it comes to EA, is that some of the content that is supposed to be released in the base game is being cut out and removed for accessibility until you get the DLCs. The other problem is shutting down game studios if they're not meeting the expected sales that EA wants them to meet. And quite frankly, Black Box Studios had fell victim into this, which is also the next point after I talk about this next part. But underneath the plan of making a video game, especially Need for Speed for the most part, does take a while just to make before you decide to go out of your way to publish it. But if you want to make a high definition game that plays properly and provides the best experience for a lot of people, you would need to offer the dev teams a bit more ample time to work and make the video game as much as possible. Unlike all other companies, EA refuses to make a change in regards to this. They don't care how unfinished the game is, all they care about is maximizing the amount of profit they can get from these games. And Need for Speed 2015 is no exception in regards to the short amount of development time implemented, because a decade from now, it still plays the same way as it is, with the gameplay physics and mechanics from Need for Speed Rivals being 25 times watered down and 30 times more worse. Now we know that EA Games give their studios a small amount of time to work on making another video game, but only saying that is just a small chunk of the cake, as Larry had the intentions to buy off any studio that would make him a good amount of money, such as Westwood Studios for Command & Conquer, PopCap Studios for Plants vs. Zombies, and even Maxis for the Sims franchise. And all of that done for EA to turn a profit real quickly. But should a certain video game franchise not work out very well to making a good amount of sales, and the studio will be the one that gets the shutdown. Led by example would be Westwood Studios back in 2003. By quality, they were suffering by a lot just to make another Command & Conquer game. So much that some of the titles were either rushed or unfinished pieces of work. And the only reason why the quality has suffered a lot is because there was a decline to it. And it's only like this because EA is providing a small amount of time to develop the game. Because to EA, that wasn't the main focus whatsoever. The main focus was how many sales the game was going to make overall. And while the studio shut down, most of the people were laid off from this kind of work. And some of the other staff have to move into other cities for work. And in EA fashion, they don't care. Black Box Studios shutting down is kind of the same thing, except it's in a different kind of scenario. Much more different in regards to Westwood Studios and Command & Conquer. But in the year of 2012, Black Box had ended up releasing Need for Speed The Run. This was 2 years later after Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 was released, and the same year where Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 would release. But in comparison to the other two games, Need for Speed The Run did not perform as well as anticipated. The reason as to why there was poor sales inside of this game and how the reception was pretty much negative was because the game was criticized for the lack of innovation that is within the title. But at the same time, quite plenty of people were saying that this was a failure compared to the success of the previous titles within the franchise. Now, for me, this is kind of a hunch, but as far as I know, this has something to do in regards to Underground and whatever else Black Box made back then. But besides that, not only did the game cause the whole entire problem to be the way as is, the same could also be said in regards to EA Games, especially given that somewhere in the 2010s, EA was planning to restructure, well, pretty much everything around it. The same could even be applied to some of the game studios, as 9 studios were to be picked to be put through some consolidation or even full-on closure, and Black Box was one of the few studios that ended up in full closure. The way that Electronic Arts sees it is that Need for Speed The Run was a critical failure, that it just so happens to be an underrated title. You would not hear anyone talk about it normally nowadays. Anyways, the point is, it was a failure because of the small amount of sales the game made overall. And we all should know that EA has a bad habit of closing down studios who done poorly in regards to video game sales. But the studio would not be shut down until April 25th of 2013. Before it got shut down, it was rebranded to Quicklime Games in July 23rd of 2012. And the last game they made was Need for Speed World. Now, in regards to Need for Speed 2015, not only is Larry Probitz's business practices is what made the game suffer a lot, but another set of business practices that made Need for Speed go on a spiraling downfall since 2015 would be coming from Andrew Wilson. And one of the business practices that he had an interest in regards to EA Games is games as a service, or GAS for short, meaning any and almost all games are required to be a live service game, especially the ones that you buy, such as Star Wars Battlefront 2 as an example. Because if they do that, they'll have a good chance to monetize out of the video game going through content updates inside of Star Wars Battlefront, whether in regards to in-game microtransactions and even loot boxes. But unlike Valve in regards to Team Fortress 2 and Blizzard for the original Overwatch game, any game that is being developed underneath EA's payroll is specifically to be a pay-to-win live service game for the most part. But besides all that, this too was another problem in regards to Need for Speed 2015. You are buying the game right there and then, and you're not being told, unless someone figured it out, that the game is a live service game on a fucking price tag. The worst case scenario in regards to this game is that the very last update for a live service game was at April 27th of 2016. It has been 9 fucking years and there hasn't been an update to this game. Star Wars The Old Republic, a live service game from 2012, has been getting some content updates and even patches. And yet you're gonna go out of your way to abandon Need for Speed 2015? What is the fucking logic? But besides that, the final verdict is the company rushed Ghost to make the damn game and sell it out to the public. And the worst part is, they made this a live service game despite the fact that there is no in-game purchases or microtransactions anywhere aside the DLC for this game, before there was even a deluxe version of the game.
And to top it all off, in regards to this game being a live service game where it needs to get updates, the lifespan of this game getting updates, regardless of whether it's additional content or some patches, the game has been getting a few updates for a few months to maybe even half a year. And each and every single patch inside of this game, there was basically no improvement in regards to the gameplay, physics, and mechanics whatsoever. Not even the additional content, such as Eddie's challenge, or an additional amount of vehicles, which probably were supposed to be in the base game, isn't even supposed to make the game appear a lot more better than its previous state to a normal customer. But in regards to some of the people inside of the Need for Speed community, well, that's a different story altogether. And to top it all off, there isn't even a point for this game to be a live service game. So if anything, yeah, EA forced Ghost to make live service abandonware. Speaking of which, up next is Ghost Games. Now I'm gonna go straight off the bat being the genuine asshole as much as I possibly can be to simply say this. Ghost Games should have not listened to the community. And before you decide to go out of nowhere like a baby who soiled his damn diaper complaining about this, let me explain. It's obvious enough that they were underneath EA's payroll because they were making a Need for Speed game. And I've already established that the business practices that EA puts in regards to video game development to their studios is what hinders the game in general. Just like Black Box Studios and Criterion Games, Ghost Games was walking in the same footsteps, especially since they're literally left with no other choice but to work with EA overall. And Ghost Games had full control in regards to making another Need for Speed game. Meanwhile, EA sets Criterion out to work alongside with DICE to make the next few Battlefield games, which is interesting, but despite the fact that Ghost Games is essentially a mix of Criterion and DICE employees, one can say that some of the employees inside of this studio are not really experienced in regards to making racing games. But even at that, the whole studio was set to do this. Besides, they'll learn eventually at one point how racing games work. Anyways, Ghost was assigned to make the next Need for Speed game, and EA intends to make the next release upon the year of 2015. So they essentially decided to go out of their way to get to work on that. But those weren't the only set of voices that they were hearing out for. They were also hearing out for those that were inside the Need for Speed community, where people have been crying, begging, and even pleading for another Need for Speed game that's supposed to be similar to Underground. Basically asking for another Need for Speed game to be in the streets of a city, and giving you the freedom to change your cars' body kits and rims, as well as improving the performance of your vehicle. And they also wanted a campaign inside of the game as well, which isn't a bad idea, but hinders the whole entire point of game development. Because Ghost, much like any other studio that is being controlled by EA, doesn't have a lot of time to be making another Need for Speed game that is supposed to be the way that people apparently wanted. And the worst part is, Ghost Games doesn't even know what makes a good Need for Speed Underground style game. The car customization is extremely limited in regards to the body kits. The campaign is complex. It's not that bad really, but it's just that inside of the cutscenes, it takes a very long while for anyone to get to the point as to what you will be doing within the next few missions inside of this game. And last I checked, in the older Need for Speed games, considerably more of the Underground games, there was no form of car celebrity or enthusiasts inside of those titles. And this is all underneath the same gameplay, physics, and mechanics from Need for Speed Rivals, but a lot more worse. Like, listening to the community as to what they suggest is not a bad idea, especially for some AAA titles that are still getting some love at some point. But as for Ghost Games, making another Need for Speed title that EA has requested, listening to the community is the very last thing they should have done. Like, let's make a what if scenario. Had Ghost Games not listened to some of the individuals, especially Black Panther, in regards as to what they should do to make another Need for Speed game, and while the amount of copies that are sold is debatable, the Need for Speed that Ghost Games could have released in 2015 that isn't what it is today would have had a lot more better reviews in Metacritic. Because if they haven't listened to the community, they probably would be able to improve the gameplay, physics, and mechanics starting off from Need for Speed Rivals. This is if Ghost Games made a Need for Speed game that isn't based on
underground street racing that doesn't have any form of car customization and sure as hell doesn't have a campaign. And better yet, take all of the stuff that the community is basically saying and leave it as a suggestion for some other point in time. But instead, Ghost Games listened to the community and this is the result that we end up with. An urban understyled Need for Speed game with very limited car customization in general and a campaign which features crappy and boring ass cutscenes.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
And a game that plays like fucking garbage to a point where not only doing any of the racing events that you're supposed to do inside of this game is what makes it problematic, but it makes playing this game in general a really fucking boring experience. That's after you complete all of the campaign inside of this game as well as Eddie's challenges. But hey, this is a Need for Speed game that the community wanted. Which brings me to the third contributor that made the game the way it is. The community. Or well, I should at least say at least some of the people inside the community. Boy oh boy, I'm gonna have a field day with the community. And this hints all the way back in time to the supercar era of Need for Speed games. Criterion Games was building up on the charge of taking over the Need for Speed franchise for the time being, all while Black Box Studios was on the decline. Especially one of Criterion's biggest hits since 2010, known as Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. A title that determined the change as to who would develop the next Need for Speed games within the future. Thus being said, because the gameplay physics and mechanics were actually sustainable and really good for its time. And even by today's standards, the games' environments were outmatched in comparison to any other game, especially any other Need for Speed title. With a copy sold of being somewhere over 8.5 million, with a Metascore of 88 and a user score of 7.5, making it one of the most favorable Need for Speed games since PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. But this, as well as Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, and especially Rivals, caused something towards the community. A certain split within the community that caused the whole entire outrage. Within any form of social media, there was a cry of woe from every single individual inside the Need for Speed community, especially Black Panther, to push a motive in regards to the Need for Speed franchise where it needs to be car customization and underground styled racing. Something that could bring in some goodness in regards to the nostalgia of those old games. But to be quite clear on something, the idea was pretty redundant after Black Box Studios was shut down. In fact, the last game that was ever made in Need for Speed by Black Box that had car customization and a campaign was Need for Speed Undercover. Either way, there was not a need to do this, but yet everyone was complaining about this very often. Criterion has gone for at least 3 titles not listening to the community as to what they've wanted for the most part, because they were pretty much on a crunch time in regards to making another Need for Speed game before EA decides to publish it out to the public. And whatever the community has to say in regards to the game can wait until the game is already finished. But yet the community keeps on complaining on and on and on again as to no car customization here, no campaign there. No car customization equals no fun. I want to go racing in the streets at night with my Challenger. I want to get in trouble with the cops in the middle of the streets in the city. If I can't do all that, then the game is instantly bad right there and then.
Would you stop complaining?
Like honestly, this should have been said a long time ago, but I'm just gonna say it right now. You cannot, and I mean you cannot, expect a Need for Speed game to be the way you want it. It's like trying to expect another Midnight Club game to be developed and released after Midnight Club Los Angeles from 2008. And even though we're getting the games with car customization as well as street racing, even by today's standards, you cannot expect those games that you're talking about right now, which is the modern Need for Speed games, to be anywhere near good or better than what Black Box had to offer back then. Back to the task at hand, the community just happens to complain over and over and over again to try to get a Need for Speed game that meets their expectations in one way or another. And the only reason why they keep complaining about this is because they have the ultimate sheer lack of satisfaction as to what was delivered inside of these games. This whole entire ordeal is like the cutscene from Need for Speed Carbon where Darius confronts you about the whole entire thing. When Black Box was around, we were given Underground, We were given Underground 2. We were given Most Wanted 05. We were given Carbon. We were given Undercover. We were even given The Run, as well as a few skate games. But yet, even all of those Need for Speed titles that I mentioned, and yet the community is not satisfied with those games that we had back then. Instead, they want to make a status quo where they could go out of their way and try to argue their case as to why we still need for Speed games with car customization and a campaign, when we literally don't need it all the time. As someone who had a childhood of Need for Speed Underground back then, especially considering around the PS2, when I was still young and naive, I was disappointed that we were not going to get any more Need for Speed games in regards to car customization and all of that since Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 on the PS3. But even at that, I still managed to find myself a way to enjoy Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 without needing car customization inside the game. And as time progresses onwards, I've grown to a point where customization inside of a racing game isn't always needed all the time in regards to paint jobs and body kits, and it was made perfectly clear back when I played Gran Turismo 5 on the PS3 as well. As the one thing I had to pick up on is that car customization in general was just a bonus that was added into the game, a bonus that isn't really needed or even necessary all of the time. But in regards to some of the people that are inside of the Need for Speed community, they don't think of it like this. They think that car customization is always important inside of the game, and this is all to please their undying satisfaction for the most part. And because of all this, the game franchise has been on a downfall, all the way up to Need for Speed Unbound, no doubt. And it's been on this downfall because of the community, which is literally the most depressing shit I've ever heard in my entire lifeline. And between Ghost Games and EA itself, I'd say that the community itself is the #1 reason as to why Need for Speed 2015 was the biggest failure of that time. Even if you got some other YouTubers slash streamers such as AR12 or even the Slap Train that made content on that game back then. And while they did enjoy the game for their time at some certain degree, at least, unlike Black Panther, they veered into different racing games that isn't just specifically Need for Speed. And even I would do the same thing too. And while they have their own reasons as to why they want to go veer on and do some other content for other video games, the only reason why I want to do the same thing in regards to modern day Need for Speed games is because I don't want to be roaming around in this garbage filled rabbit hole that just so happens to dig itself even further into the Earth's core, let alone to even play another Need for Speed game altogether. With that being said, because of how the community is in regards to the Need for Speed franchise back in 2015, even by today's standards, it is really not worth trying to go through the trouble and playing through these games. The same could even be said for any new one that comes out at some point, because if it's a Need for Speed game that features car customization, it is a Need for Speed game for a certain amount of people in the community with an undying satisfaction. Honestly, I want to say that I feel bad for the franchise for the route it's going because of these individuals, but at the same time I can't because of the fucking community. I should be proud that I'm not even a part of it, so that way I wouldn't hear a lot of people complaining to me as to why I think car customization isn't really even needed to be inside of the game. But then again, there's the YouTube comments. I might as well just look into those when the video is finished, because it's not going to be through the Discord or even the Reddit only that they're going to complain in regards to this video. There's also going to be the YouTube comments at the same time. What better way to end this video off with a conclusion, no? To end this whole entire video off, I have to give my 2 bits in regards to this game in general. And the very last thing I have to say in regards to this, I cannot bring myself to like this game. In fact, I bring myself to hate it. Not just based on an opinion, but also based on a few facts. On the factual side of things, it's mostly the gameplay physics and mechanics that I find the biggest issue towards this game. Even if I happen to be one of the few individuals who happen to master the whole entire handling model and physics and mechanics, I can't and never will get over the fact as to how bad the handling is inside of this game. Nor will I ever ever dismiss this. It's literally that bad, to a point where I want to say that Super Street the Games' handling at least functions a little bit more better in comparison. I don't like that game because it plays like ass, but as far as I know, this game plays a lot more worse. It's essentially going to Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 syndrome, except that it's not taking the gameplay physics and mechanics from Burnout Paradise just like Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 did. It's taking the gameplay physics and mechanics from Need for Speed Rivals, but made to play way more worse just for the sake of car modifications inside of the game. Another thing I don't like is that it's a live service game, so I need an internet connection every single day in my life just to play this game. And this was, and always will be, the biggest complaint that a lot of people will have in regards to this game. As for progressing through the game, it's a pain in the ass to go back and forth just to deal with whatever the hell that you're supposed to do to progress through the whole entire game. It doesn't take very long to suffer in regards to this, considering the fact that I have 2 cars inside of the garage. But going back and forth just to change cars to do whatever the hell you're supposed to do to progress through this whole entire game is still an irritating experience, because the progression in general is an absolute fucking mess. And should you be playing this game on PC, boy do I have a treat for you. The PC port of this game just so happens to be a bit more worse in comparison to the consoles. I say it like that because the PC version of this game has a better chance of crashing on you in comparison to the consoles, in which case is BS. Because I was playing this game on a Dell G15 Ryzen Edition, a moderate gaming laptop that could allow me to play this game. Also some Monster Hunter in my free time, running with an Nvidia GeForce RTX graphics card, and yet still happens to crash on me. And if the game happens to crash, a log will come out and it will say something in regards to the graphics card, which is very doubtful. I could probably be running this game very well, but the only problem as to why the game crashed is possibly considering the fact that it's an online live service game. This part of the game, in comparison to anything else, is very irritable, that taking a picture of me flipping off the crash log was added into my bucket list. In regards to cutscenes, Need for Speed Underground as well as whatever other ones that were out there before this game, and especially Midnight Club 3, are a lot more sustainable to view through while playing through the game in comparison to this one. Because for the most part, the cutscenes inside of these games were simplistic. One moment the characters will have a moment of their little dialogue, then the next moment they'll cut to the chase as to what you're gonna do next. I cannot say the same thing for this game, because inside of this game, it's just really complex. When looking at the cutscenes inside this game while playing through the campaign, you would have to look at every single individual that is speaking to you inside of the cutscenes. Plus, everyone is wasting my motherfucking time. Like, I don't want to be inside of the cutscenes dealing with a lot of conversations. Can we cut to the damn chase inside of these? For each and every single character inside of this campaign, the only ones that I happen to like are both Amy and Travis. I fucking abhor Spike. To me, he's nothing more than just a little show-off. He's also an envious little shit because of what you're doing in regards to his campaign for Magnus Walker, for Pete's sake. And to make things more worse, he literally appears in every single other campaign inside this game, more than anyone else. He is literally annoying to a point where I actually want to go inside the video game cutscenes and punch him right in the fucking face. Just not the actor himself. I'm pretty sure he had better appearances in comparison to the video game. I don't like Robin because I feel like she's a filler character within the whole entire game, just to fill in the gap for the drift train scene. I feel like that either Spike or Manu would take this position more better. And at the very least, I fucking hate how she looks like a teenage delinquent. When inside these cutscenes, she looks like she's in her 20s. And needless to say, obviously, I hate her part of the campaign altogether. So safe to say, I don't even think it should even exist. And Manu was literally a mixed bag out of all the other ones. Yeah, sure, I'm fine with his attitude and how he is inside of this game, but you gotta remember, there's 2 things that I don't like in regards to him. 1, his yee ass haircut. 2, his quest to impress Ken Block just for fucking shrimp tacos. And the worst part is, they had to include celebrities such as Ken Block, Akira Nakai, and even Magnus Walker for these cutscenes. To which, of course, I'll say this, I'm pretty sure they had better things to do that is car related rather than being involved in cutscenes for a damn video game. And quite frankly, we all know the story that this is a live service game. So it's safe to say that a live service game like this needs updates like any any other game else. Well, looking at this list inside of fandom, there's very little updates inside of this game. Even in a more detailed view as to what the update contained, it felt like there was minimum to no improvement in regards to this game whatsoever. And as far as I know, there should be at least a rule of 2 in regards to a live service game, in regards to the updates. Whereas rule number 1, actually at least try to put some time and effort to actually update the damn game. And the second rule should be making updates for more than just a few months. And if that could not be done, then there's no need to make the game a live service game. I'll just say right there. And since this is a live service game, its fate is sealed within the next few years that the game will shut down at some point. Or maybe the Stop Killing Games initiative will expand in regards to Need for Speed 2015, given it's a live service game, and will try to go against EA in regards to video game preservation should EA happen to shut this game down at some point. There's two things that I could go by in regards to this. One, I highly doubt that EA will do any video game preservation alongside with Stop Killing Games. And two, should there be preservation in regards to this game, does not dismiss the fact that it was utter garbage at the end of the day. And at the end of it all, the biggest middle finger that was given to this franchise specifically was the community. In regards to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era, the Need for Speed franchise was seeing a sudden shift in regards to who was making the next set of games. When Criterion took over to make the next few Need for Speed games, the philosophy of game development and design was changed. From urban underground themed in the city and involves vehicle tuning, to open road and highway racing with supercars. And the certain few that saw this change hated it for what it was, within every aspect. Not just Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, but especially considering Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010. Not only did they hate the sudden change as to how the Need for Speed franchise was gonna be from there on then, but they were very extremely unsatisfied with what they were given in regards to urban underground themed street racing ever since the PS2, pushing their own little status quo as to wanting a Need for Speed game that is the same way as Underground, talking about how good the old games were and still wanting more games like that as of today's standards. They don't seem to understand, and even if they do, they refuse to accept the fact that an urban underground themed Need for Speed game is redundant by today's standards. And even if it just happens, and safe to say it has been happening for quite a while, it will not, and it never will be, anywhere near good or anywhere near better than what we previously had back then, no matter how much you want to try to slice it. It's like trying to put modern day rap against classic retro rap from the 1980s to the 1990s, where many musicians back then, from Tupac to Notorious B.I.G., Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, Eazy-E, especially even Ice Cube, especially Snoop Dogg, and whoever else back then cannot be toppled over by these modern day rappers that we have nowadays. The worst case scenario in regards to the community is that if anyone talks bad in regards to a game that has car customization, especially one that's developed within modern times, they'll come up in the middle of nowhere like a pair of whiny brats, pretty much complaining to you as how you could possibly be wrong in this regard. And quite most of them are always gonna go based on their own opinions as to how this game is possibly good. A guy like me could think of this one thing, that opinions are not the strongest type of thesis that you should bring inside of an argument. But it's not like it's gonna matter. They're gonna think that you're the worst type of individual inside of the Need for Speed community, calling you a toxic little shit at some certain degree. But when in reality you decide to make a video in regards to a game such as like this one as an instance, that just so happens to push the franchise even further to its own deathbed. And not only through the gameplay, but the various amount of information that you could gather in regards to these games, and spill out the facts in regards as to how and why the game is bad in the first place. I'm literally gathering all the information, not just through the gameplay, but also in regards as to everything else inside of the game, all while spilling out facts in regards as to how and why this game is bad. But nevertheless, someone or some people are gonna come out from the Need for Speed community and try to say that I'm the biggest piece of shit for making a video like this. Well, allow me to say that this is not my first time having people inside of the community, some of them even enjoying some of these games, for being angry at me just because I'm pissing all over their backyard. Obviously, in other words, saying the game is bad. And to add further insult to the injury, with these people being satisfied with what they are given in regards to car customization, I'm pretty sure they're satisfied with the downfall of the franchise in general for what it is, and the whole entire start was this game. I would continue cooking on this game inside of a spit roast with a puddle of gas that's lit up underneath it, but quite frankly, I'm cut short for time to just be saying all that. Although I will be saying this one thing. This game is literally the Chernobyl incident to the very franchise it was made for. But what about my opinion per se? Well, the game is boring, it's repetitive, it is cringe, and the progression is very annoying, with a hint of not being able to find any form of nostalgia inside of this game being the cherry on top. I may as well be playing Super Street the game by now, even though that game has quite plenty of problems on its own. Now, if there's one thing that Ghost Games should have done, is that they should have looked over not only on the amount of copies that are sold, but looked over at Metacritic to see the reviews in regards to this game overall. You know, get a good understanding in regards as to how bad this game actually was for its time. Take in all those reviews and learn at least a few lessons in regards to this. For instance, take all of the community's cry of demands and set them aside while making the next Need for Speed game. Or better yet, don't do it at all. Because honestly, this studio was not given a lot of time by EA just to make a Need for Speed game that a lot of people apparently wanted, when the end result is a mixed failure at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure if they made a Need for Speed game with some form of change that isn't what the community specifically wanted, then I'm pretty sure they would have better sales and better reviews, given by the fact that they would probably have more better time to develop the whole entire game in general, most likely to improve the physics and mechanics inside of the game for the most part. But instead, fast forward to 2017 and we got another title that just so happens to make the downfall even more worse than anticipated.